Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Tonight, the mother of a rape victim has come forward with a terrifying warning for parents.
As Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains, Maryland has allowed her daughter's convicted rapist to attend a Baltimore City Public School.
This has not only affected my daughter, it's affected me and my husband.
Project Baltimore is not identifying this woman to protect her child.
How is your daughter doing?
She struggles. She is in therapy. I wouldn't wish what we have gone through on my worst enemy.
In May of last year, when her daughter was 3 years old, she was sexually abused.
And I know statistically, people that deal with sexual abuse, they turn to different alternatives. They turn to drugs. They turn to so many different things. And to know that somebody possibly made that decision for her because of their actions is devastating to me as a mom, because I couldn't protect her from it, and I can't change it.
According to court documents obtained by Project Baltimore, the victim was raped by a now 15-year-old relative. Fox 45 is not identifying him because he's a minor and because of his relationship with the victim. Records show on December 27th, just last month, the 15-year-old entered a plea in Harford County Court to second-degree rape, a charge that does involve intercourse. But he was not sent to juvenile detention. Instead, the Department of Juvenile Services recommended probation. He was sentenced to 50 hours of community service and counseling for sex offense-specific treatment. As a convicted rapist, he was also ordered to have no unsupervised contact with children under 15.
This juvenile offender is allowed to continue to live his life completely normal. The court pretty much gave him a slap on the wrist. There was no justice for my child.
But it's this part of the court order that convinced the victim's mother to sit down with Project Baltimore. You can see it right here. It says mandatory school attendance, or GED. The 15-year-old entered his plea on December 27th over winter break. In January, as a convicted rapist, he returned to class at Patterson High School in Baltimore City.
There are students every day at Patterson High School that are sitting in class with a convicted rapist, and they don't know.
Yes. They don't have a clue.
Patterson High School is one of the largest high schools in Baltimore City. It has nearly 1,300 students, many of which are ninth graders, likely under 15 years old. And remember, the court order says the rapist can have no unsupervised contact with children under 15.
Teachers can't be everywhere. Parents need to know in order to protect their children.
But parents and students were not made aware that a sex offender was in the school, because even though he's a convicted rapist, he's also a juvenile and not a registered sex offender, meaning the school system is not legally allowed to alert the public.
I would have to say the state is protecting the rapist. I know if it was my child in a school with a convicted rapist, I would want to know. Because my daughter could be walking down the hall with him and not even know what he's capable of. So who's protecting them?
Under state law, a juvenile sex offender who is not on the registry cannot be barred from attending school in person, except in certain cases. According to this decision by the Maryland State Board of Education, which cites state law, a student can be removed from their regular school program if they pose an imminent threat of serious harm to other students or staff.
I feel like he needs to be taken out of the school system, and other means need to be given to him for schooling, whether it be homeschool, whether it be virtual school, in order to protect the general population of that school.
Project Baltimore reached out to Baltimore City Schools asking if the student will remain at Patterson or if other options such as online learning are being considered. In a statement, the school system said it cannot discuss individual students, adding, Maryland law requires city schools to provide an education to all students legally enrolled in our school system, including students found responsible for juvenile criminal offenses. The statement went on to say, the district must follow specific legal protocols to remove a student. And when making this determination, we review all available documents and work closely with the proper authorities.
It is a time bomb.
This mother says state laws need to change. Juvenile sex offenders should not be in class with other students. Next year, her daughter will start school, and she wants her to be safe.
I just hope that she knows that the reason why I'm doing this is so that she has this voice, and that I'm hoping to make a change for her, and that she will grow up to know that, like, she is a survivor. She was a victim that day, but she is now a survivor. This isn't going to define her.
Project Baltimore has learned the same 15-year-old student is accused in a similar case in Baltimore County, where he's been charged with second-degree rape. We have spoken with the alleged victim's family member, and we'll have more on that story Monday. I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Project Baltimore wants to hear from you. Do you have a story to share about your child's education or a concern you'd like our team to investigate? Call the tip line on your screen or send an email to projectbaltimore@botsbaltimore.com. You can also find us on social media.
Anne Arundel County police arrest a student who they say had a gun and ammunition in his backpack at Crofton High School this morning. Police say the investigation stems from an incident on a school bus, but the teen, according to authorities, never took out the gun at any point.
This comes as the Baltimore City Council is looking to address violence within city schools.
For months, parents have told Fox 45 News they are frustrated with the lack of consequences for young people.
Why will we tell children that they're, commit these crimes and you'll be fine? There is no charges. There are no charges.
I've talked to parents who are afraid to send their kids to school because their classmates are carjacking and carrying guns.
Well, tonight we have team coverage of the state's juvenile crime response. Jeff Abel with renewed concerns over the Department of Juvenile Services.
We begin with Keith Daniels in tonight's school safety hearing at City Hall. Keith.
Well, Kai and Mary, that hearing comes after a 15-year-old student was found with 3 guns at Dunbar High School, and we're told those guns were loaded. It happened about a month ago, and tonight, concern at City Hall.
So we'll begin with the first item.
At Baltimore City Hall, city council members critically concerned about the juvenile crime crisis and top of thought, the safety of students and staff at Baltimore City Public Schools.
Kids are bringing loaded guns to school, and you wonder why the parents say, my kid is not safe in school.
The council's committee of the whole at an oversight hearing Wednesday regarding school safety and the placement of at-risk youth within the school system. Concerned students stood up to be heard.
We can have more security surrounding the school, or at least by the school. I can feel more safe while I'm in school or not in school.
Council members called for several city leaders to attend to discuss the issue, including Baltimore Police Commissioner Rich Worley, whose deputy commissioner attended, Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates, who sent 2 of his deputies, Vincent Schiraldi, Maryland Director of Juvenile Services, his deputy secretary, attending, and City School CEO Dr. Sonia Santelises at the hearing. One of the first questions for her, an inquiry about the search for a new chief of police of city schools to replace retiring Chief Akil Ham.
Has City Schools consulted Baltimore City Police Department, its commissioner, and its leadership on the search for your next police chief?
Because we're in the middle of the process, I would say that's ongoing.
Santelises peppered with questions. We also pressed her about her response to the safety concerns inside schools.
We are working on and have done a lot of work on cameras and weapons detection. We're also actively recruiting school police officers because we know that a lot of the challenges are also right outside the school building or up into the school building.
Councilman Robert Stokes also concerned about students who are entangled in the justice system, those under the supervision of the Department of Juvenile Services, and the safety concerns that come with that.
How the students proactively tracked by DGS in the school system, and I need the DGS to answer the question also.
We track not only their attendance in school, but also we're working to have them engaged in school or re-engaged in school, and also holding them accountable for lack of attendance.
Well, regarding guns that are found on school campuses, Dr. Santelises told me that guns are found and suspects caught because of what she calls the high-quality relationships between students and adults at city schools. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. Critics argue policies within the Department of Juvenile Services are contributing to a lack of consequences for young people. Secretary Vincent Schiraldi says he doesn't believe young people should be in adult prison until age 25. He also opposes parole and probation, saying they don't rehabilitate young offenders. Tonight, Fox 45 News is looking into another voice from Schiraldi's time in D.C., calling his views short-sighted. Fox 45's Jeff Abel joins us live with that perspective. Jeff?
Well, Vincent Schiraldi's philosophy is crystal clear, but now there's a growing pattern of problems that appears to be surfacing when that philosophy is put into practice.
That young people are not just smaller versions of adults. They're not yet fully mature. Their brains are still developing.
When it comes to young offenders, Maryland's Juvenile Services Secretary has long endorsed inspiration over incarceration. When he was director of juvenile corrections in Washington 15 years ago, Vincent Schiraldi oversaw the opening of this new juvenile facility, a place Schiraldi called an anti-prison. But the very day after it opened, a juvenile scaled a wall and escaped. The escape prompted some pointed words from then-Councilwoman Muriel Bowser, writing, "I, too, want the youth in detainment to want to aspire to something other than a life behind bars and cinder-block walls. We must, however, remember they are still inmates and must be secured." A year earlier, an investigation found Schiraldi violated 5 department policies when he brought 3 maximum security offenders to his home for a cookout. One of them escaped out of a basement door and was found 22 days later selling cocaine on the streets of D.C.
You can't sit down with these juveniles and have cupcakes and crumpets and milk. I mean, many of these juveniles, they're more astute and more dangerous than adults.
His soft-on-crime approach has been greeted with hard realities. Before moving to Maryland, Schiraldi spent 7 months as director of New York's correction system.
He lied to us about violence. He was more into inmate programming instead of safety and security. It was a real debacle.
Nobody thought he did a good job. Nobody can say that he improved the criminal justice system or the jails in New York City. He made them much worse, period.
We're talking about Bedlam. Wherever he goes is Bedlam.
Kenji Scott, who once led a juvenile justice coalition in Maryland, believes Schiraldi's pattern of problems is not the solution for Maryland.
When will it happen in Baltimore? It's going to happen sooner than later. He is the biggest public safety threat in the state of Maryland right now.
So far, neither the governor nor Schiraldi has answered questions about Schiraldi's past. We're live tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. Well, the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office claims DJS hasn't been transparent about which juveniles it detains and which ones are set free. City State's Attorney Ivan Bates says nearly a third of cases sent to DJS should have actually gone directly to a judge, and he's pushing for legislation to put the decision in the hands of a judge. Bates is one of more than a dozen prosecutors across the state taking issue with Maryland's juvenile crime response. He says Secretary Schiraldi is dealing with a culture problem within DJS DJS, while others question if Schiraldi is the right person to lead the department.
I believe, talking to Secretary Schiraldi, he really gets it. But I also think that he's dealing for culture and DJS, where you have individuals who just don't want to ever, no matter what young people do, ever want to have a young person detained. So he's fighting that culture.
We can't wait forever because this is too big an issue that needs to be fixed to be broken for too long. The person who came into that position last year, you know, if you didn't help the 13-year-old, well, now they're 14. And you got to help them now when they're 14. And if we're still having this conversation when they're 15, well, then we might need to have some other conversations.
We've also heard from Baltimore residents, police leaders, and politicians who say the Secretary's juvenile crime message isn't resonating with them.
But if we're just going to look at them and say, well, they're too young to know the wrong that they've done, that is not for Baltimore. That is not for Maryland, because kids in this city, in this states, are still committing crimes.
When it comes to hearing from DJS specifically, what do you want to hear from the Secretary about what's going on?
His resignation. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but I just don't think he gets it.
You're basically saying up until the age of 25, which is what he wants to do, you get a free ride.
Unfortunately, legislators, lawmakers, have decided that it's better to support the lawbreakers rather than those who are enforcing the law.
Lawmakers in Annapolis are planning to take a closer look at juvenile crime legislation. Senate President Bill Ferguson says there is a high-level agreement on changes for the department, but no specifics have been announced just yet. Senator Cory McCray from Baltimore is drafting legislation for more transparency within DJS, saying he hasn't had a working relationship with the department since Schiraldi took the helm.
When we have juveniles that's engaged in a fatal shooting or a non-fatal shooting, I want to understand what is the after action. How, if they were under the purview of DJS. If they were under the purview of DJS, I think that the Secretary Schiraldi has the responsibility to be able to communicate. When did his agency make contact? How do we know that retaliation isn't going to exist? How do we know that someone isn't going to continue to come after this young man or young woman that's under their purview? And he should be able to articulate that in a manner that anybody can understand.
Fox 45 News has been looking into the issues surrounding DJS for months. You can find our complete coverage online at foxbaltimore.com.
Police say 32-year-old Alan Geslicki has been arrested in connection to the murder of a 6-year-old boy last night in Baltimore. City police say the suspect is the boyfriend of the boy's mother, saying he stabbed the boy in the back multiple times. Mayor Brandon Scott offered his condolences this morning.
No family should have to go through the loss of a child like that, and I think that it just again uplifts the importance of the work that happens not just from the police department but from everything else, because when you have that happen to a young person who wasn't out running the streets, who wasn't doing anything other than being a 6-year-old child, it's devastating to our communities.
This child is the 12th homicide victim this year in Baltimore.
A newly unsealed federal indictment and plea agreement is shining light on another connection between gang activity and the Safe Streets program. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost has an update on her investigation.
Tyrell Jeffries pleaded guilty earlier this month to racketeering connected to the notorious gang, the Black Gorilla Family. And in the plea agreement, we're learning that a Safe Streets location was actually used by BGF members to plot even more crimes. Safe Streets back in the spotlight. In this plea agreement, Tyrell Jeffries, tied to Baltimore's Black Gorilla Family gang, outlines how the gang used Safe Streets to further their criminal activity, detailing a years-long string of drug dealing, attempted murders, and using this violence intervention location as a de facto BGF clubhouse. According to the court documents, Jeffries admits that he participated in BGF meetings at the Safe Streets site. 2 BGF members in the meetings were employed by Safe Streets as violence interrupters, who were tasked with encouraging positive changes. Jeffries admits throughout the spring and summer of 2015, he and other BGF members stashed guns and drugs at the site, and in May of 2015, Jeffries says his co-conspirators plotted a retaliatory hit on a rival gang member while at the Safe Streets site. Jeffries and others shot a rival who was at a vigil for a different homicide victim at the intersection of North Rose and East Monument Streets, just blocks from the Safe Streets site. 2 years later, Jeffries also admits to selling cocaine on the 2400 block of East Monument. Again, just one block from the Safe Streets site where people are supposed to be working to prevent violence.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Wednesday.
Thank you for joining us.
We pressed Mayor Brandon Scott about Safe Streets being used as a gang hangout and a place to plot even more crimes.
Can you definitively say that similar things are not happening at other Safe Streets locations in the city?
What I can say is that anytime that we find anybody being involved in criminal activity, Mackenzie, we remove those people and turn those over to the other parts of the justice system. I said to you 1,000 times, I don't care if those things are being had at the DBW office, if they're being plotted out in the basement of Fox 45 TV, wherever they're being plotted out, our folks are working to find those people and remove them and working with our law enforcement partners, as was the case in this case.
But yes or no, can you definitively say that that's not happening?
What I can tell you again is that when we know people are committing criminal acts, my police department arrests them.
The mayor not answering yes or no. The city shut down the Safe Streets site in 2015 after guns and drugs were found, but later it resumed violence prevention efforts. Now the location is operating at a different site. But this is not the first time BGF and Safe Streets have been connected. In October 2023, the FBI executing a search warrant at the Bel Air Edison Safe Streets site, along with the homes of employees. One employee, David Caldwell, was hit with a state-level ammunition charge. That was later dropped due to the federal search warrant remaining sealed. Caldwell no longer employed with Safe Streets, and the site remains inactive. Sources close to the investigation tell Fox 45 News the probe could be connected to BGF activity. Meanwhile, the mayor remains committed to Safe Streets as a cornerstone of his crime prevention strategy.
Jeffries also pleaded guilty to other charges, including another hit on a drug dealer. And in the meantime, the federal government staying pretty tight-lipped about that investigation involving the Safe Streets location in Bel Air Edison. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
The Baltimore Inspector General's office is moving forward with an audit of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. Inspector General Isabel Cummings says the Monzi audit specifically will look into how the Safe Streets program spends money and how those spending decisions are made.
The amount of money that goes through, especially ARPA, is what, 650 some million. So, and Safe Streets has received a lot of money too. So I truly appreciate the priority of realizing that, we got to follow the money.
City Councilman Antonio Glover has been a vocal critic of Safe Streets, unsatisfied with how the program handled mediations in the hours leading up to last year's Brooklyn Day mass shooting, and why Safe Streets workers left that block party without alerting police of potential threats.
I think that until we start to see transparency in data, I think that money should be held to a halt.
That brings us to our question of the day. Do you think the Safe Streets program should be paused until an audit is complete? So far, 98% of those who voted say yes. You can head to foxbaltimore.com to weigh in.
I'm Chris Pabst. Thanks for watching. Here's another story to watch. Also, if you have a story idea, please send us a message.